Yeah, I'm sorry, so what's your name? Matt? I'm Diane. Yeah, nice to meet you.
I heard you say you're
all right. Guys, thank you for being here, especially in the crazy weather and the tornadoes that are coming.
Tornadoes?
The earthquakes, I guess we hit them. Huh? Can you promise earthquakes, tornadoes, winds? What else is coming? Who knows, right? So thank you. I always start with saying, thank you for being here. As my dad always says, you never know who you're going to meet, one idea, one person, small, medium, gigantic, that can change your life and have a new direction in your business. And so it's all because you showed up and you're here with a bunch of crazy investors and entrepreneurs. Thank you for being here. We're a small enough group that we can actually do introductions. So, wow. Yes. Who you are, what you do, and what are you looking out for? What are you looking forward to today? So I'll start. I'm Ron Harris. I'm a serial entrepreneur, former IT guru, IT guy turned real estate investor after I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. Changed my life, screwed me up in a good way. Started investing in real estate. That was just a stepping stone to my own purpose in life, which is coaching and mentoring. So today I own real estate investing stuff, properties. I also own a real estate coaching program, and with my wife we own a real estate brokerage. And we do all things under that kind of umbrella. So what I like to get out today is I love the stories. I love meeting entrepreneurs. I love hearing them from the beginning to the end, because you never know who these people are and all the experiences and what wisdom, what golden nugget you'll get. So I just love doing this kind of stuff. So, who you are, what you do, and what you do. Hey!
That was my intro. It's not going to hit, is it? Okay. Well, I met some of you last time. I'm Diane Grimian. I'm a registered nurse. And I have a company, a training company, where I travel around and do workshops to help nursing students pass their state board exams. We have a 99% pass rate, so if you know any nursing students that are struggling and need to get through school and need to have success, hit me up. I'm super excited about tonight because I met Ethan two or three times at different events, and I'm really excited to hear about his invention, his innovations, because that's something that I'm working on the side that has nothing to do with nursing, but just something else. I'm a real creative person, and so I'm super excited to meet all of you guys as well.
Hey guys, I'm Carl Francel. I own and operate a test preparation company called Olympia Prep. We help high school students improve their ACT, SAT, PSAT scores. Been doing that for the last 7.5 years. I'm here because Ethan's a personal friend of mine, and I just love hearing him go off on a tangent just in regular conversation. So now I get to give him the full floor to do that for as long as he wants to. So I'm really excited to just try to soak that up from him.
Hey guys, I'm Drew Ramsey. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Mostly focused on mobile app publishing and development, and also in the real estate realm, wholesaling and Airbnbs.
Okay.
And I'm here because I'm a good friend of Ethan's, and always love to hear him talk and just connections with great people.
I'm an engineer for a company right now currently, and my goal is to open up another business. I owned my own business over a decade ago, and my goal is to start a new one. And I'm not sure 100% of the direction. I'm here to try to take ideas, maybe something like you said, maybe talk to one person. You may spark an idea. I got plenty of my own, but I just want to hear and see everybody else and see what we can go from there.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Lenhart, and I'm an energy healer. So I work with the energy fields, whether it's pain, emotion, illnesses, and just heal the underlying imbalances that lead to those illnesses. And then I'm looking forward to hearing a new perspective on life. It was really cool to see that we're going to be looking into, did it say quantum leaps? Or, yeah, quantum leaps and ideas. So hearing something new.
My name is Brian Cottle. I'm an IT infrastructure consultant. I'm just here to get some new ideas on where I can take my own business instead of working for another company. So
That's how it starts.
Hey, my name is Matt Blagg. I'm a singer-songwriter, a real estate investor, and a life coach, and I happen to be Ethan's dad. So, but I would be here even if I weren't Ethan's dad because I'd love hearing what he has to say. So nice to be here.
That's awesome.
I'm John Grissom. I'm Angeline's brother. We know her. I'm a I was the leasing manager for Robert Elder's company, Clean Home Rentals. I actually got let go today because somebody that has a lot more years experience just pretty much stepped in and he's going to try to get a good job for this year. So, so other than that, I do freelance web design. I have a degree in HR and pretty much I have a music website called More Bands that I'm working on, and I've been working on that for a few years now. So.
My name is Johnny Bowe. I'm a college student right now. I'm also an entrepreneur. And I'm here today just to meet sort of anyone I could look up to, or just meet like-minded individuals.
Cool. Hi, I'm Michael Badrini. I'm a branding and logo designer. And I think the biggest thing that I'm looking for here is just building relationships. This is my first time to come to this event, so I usually go to my typical industry events. So this is, I think, is a good opportunity for me just to meet some new people.
Hi, I'm Ian Gottsio, also my first time here. So, me and some partners and I started a company a couple months back. We're medium-sized enough businesses. We're a Microsoft solutions provider and direct reseller, small business CRM development, full financial suite development. We're a Zoho partner on that side, and we kind of customize that platform. Looking for the small side, people that are looking for good systems, and then medium size, again, looking for people that are in the IT industry that are possibly looking at trying to go to more of a cloud infrastructure.
All going to the cloud.
All right.
My name is Corey Chandler, and I started a business called Medical Prology. This past April, it's my first foray into this world, but it's a home-sharing site where traveling medical professionals can find housing while they're on assignment. They typically look for short-term housing anywhere from 13 plus weeks. Professionally, I work in the healthcare field, not as a nurse, but on the corporate side. But I have been actually renting out my 2 bedrooms to traveling medical professionals for the past couple of years, and it's been very lucrative. And I know there's a huge industry for it, and as the economy starts to wane, it's always good for anyone really to have another source of income, and it's just a great opportunity. And so I'm just looking to meet new people. This is my first time at this particular meetup, and just trying to learn. I'm always interested on innovation and how I can make my business better and everything.
Who you are, what you do, and what are you looking forward to out of today?
I'm Emily Brew. I'm a massage therapist, and I'm just looking to expand that. I saw the words mantra, quantum leap.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's check it out. So yeah, I'm here to see what this is all about and meet other people who are interested in some of this.
Awesome.
I'm Chad Curry. I own a real estate company as well as a residential one in the office. My new office is really downtown in this place, so just kind of get more involved in the entrepreneurship community. And I love working with new people in the space and whether it's to buy, develop, invest, or if we're looking to lease. We're doing more leases for the following company in town for small companies, and we really help with that. So it's been fun journey, and I'm excited to be there. With Ethan and Josh and
I'm the Josh who speaks up, Joshua Gonzalez. I work with Chad in real estate. I'm doing all the things that you mentioned, and I also own Boombox Recording Studios and Artist Management. This is my wife, Sunny. She helps take care of everything so that I can actually try to focus on business.
So she's the better half, you're saying, right?
The smarter half.
Smarter half, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Okay. I'm Victor Canero. I'm a wannabe entrepreneur, I guess, but I've been in IT for about 30 years, and I finally decided I just want to go out and start my own company, doing IT consulting, and application development, and focusing on training, project management training, and everything else in that space. I also recently bought a hair salon business, and I own 3 hair salons, you know, the small stuff and the small ones. It's a franchise, so, you know, anybody who's in a franchise, you know, the franchise makes a lot of money. So I'm there, but I'm trying to build the IT side of the IT business, and so it's always great to network with people, and that's why I'm here. And of course, you hear y'all.
My name is Netchtello, and I have a company in residential property management, houses, apartments, here in the OKC Metro. Just from listening to everyone here, I think probably everybody's smarter than I am, so I'm just here to listen so that I can get information from talented, smart people.
Hi, I'm Susan Fellow. It's my dad. I'm here to just listen and get new ideas. Learn how to start the process of starting a business or starting something.
Not fair, so young, start so early.
I'm Robert Seal, Scout Lending. We do commercial and residential loans. If you want to buy a building, start a business, or potentially gain additional financing to expand your business, we do that. I also buy and hold investment property. I flipped some in the past, but I'm not real good at that, so I'll stick to what question.
Are you also a photographer?
What's that?
You're also a photographer.
I'm standing in for him while he's
Johnny, did you introduce yourself? Okay, I just told you. Okay.
I'm Jared Jenks. I'm a real estate agent primarily, focusing on retail buyers and sellers. I'm also a real estate investor focusing on single-family rental property. Very early in the game, so I'm hoping to learn a lot from Ethan and kind of get new ideas and new perspective on some things. So, appreciate it.
I'm Roger Goblin. I do real estate so I can do my mission in life, and that's to invest in leaders in Africa. And just got back from there, and it's the best investing in people.
I'm Eric Barrow. Roger Goblin told me to say I'm a Scotland. He is. I've done a lot of things, but right now I'm buying mostly rentals, but some flips here in Oklahoma City and in Florida. I heard that there's some unique people in the room. I've previously done social media management, advertising with the owner of the Criterion downtown. So I don't know if there's any connections I can come up with on that, but let me know if there is.
You're also an IT guy. I missed that part.
I would like to not be one anymore.
So there's a lot of real estate investors here because a lot of us are associated with each other, but the IT guys too. I know that's your identity. That was my identity growing up. I literally had a computer in my crib. Back in the 80s, you bought a computer from my dad or his competitors. I was that super nerd in high school. I almost had the pocket picture, but I knew that was kind of nerdy, so I didn't do that, right? And so that was my identity. To walk away from that feels like you're ripping everything about who you are. And I did something sacrilegious the other day. Computer guy, computer gamer, right? We always build our own computers. And my machine started messing up. I said, oh, it's time for me to make another computer. I'm just going to build it. I'll catch up with the new technologies and the parts. 3 days later, I'm still catching up. I said, screw this. I'm going to go off and buy a computer off the shelf for my gaming rig. Right? No! Right? And guess what? I'll never, ever go back to build a computer again. It was life-changing. I'm like, oh my God. I have servers in my house. I had about 20 at one time. Right? And every time one died, or got in the cloud, I said, when it died, I said, it's time for this little one to go. Right? My last server, my most important one, of all the important data, and not important data too, they finally crashed during tax season last year. Right? The worst time to have, because that's where my taxes are. Right? For all my friends said, if I get rid of my servers, I'll lose my street cred as an IT guy. And I said, I don't care. So I put an NAS in, network attached service, network attached storage, and never looked back. All old school, Windows 10 with Windows shares, simple, no IT level, high level stuff, and software, and licenses and costs and all that. We're talking cheap. I'll never go back to IT as far as for a living. So those of you guys that are IT, if you're struggling to let that go, I'm a person who's let go and did something else. So.
I want to know what you're doing with all your hardware.
Huh? What's that?
What do you do with the old hardware?
I will give it to you. I have a whole room full. I have servers that used to be $20,000 plus $1,000. They're probably worth nothing now. They're worth nothing.
You can't throw it in the trash.
And I throw it away, right? Right. The hard drives. I gotta destroy the hard drives. It's got information that's highly sensitive to people. So, all right. So guys, thank you. We'll just jump right into it here. All right. So. Okay, so Group New presents The Art of Innovation with Ethan Blagg, founder and CEO of Breker.
Yes.
Breker. He's going to be sharing about mantras, quantum leaps, and ideas. Making a mantra, why it's valuable, and how to make one. The quantum leaps, what are they, and how to take them. And ideas, where to source them, and how to apply them. His bio is he's an inventor, investor, entrepreneur. He's the founder and CEO of Breker, a company focused on advancing civilization's technologies and tackling the world's big problems. He reserved his first patent at 18 years old, which is where I met you downtown when you invented with your team a football helmet, which is a pretty cool story.
Posted that picture the other day.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah. So I actually remember when I was there, I remembered him. So he stood out that long ago, right? Which was not that too long ago, right? So, guys, let's give him.
What was the invention?
He'll tell you about it.
Oh, okay. I thought.
So welcome, guys. Let's give a round of applause.
That's the first time I've ever shook his hand.
Yeah.
He always does fist bumps. Welcome. Thank you guys for coming out on the gloomy, somewhat treacherous day. So I'm here to help you avoid tragedy in business, because businesses that don't innovate, those are the ones that fail the quickest. And you can look at how much of an impact companies like Amazon has had on the business landscape. They're putting mom and pop shops out of business left and right, and that's because they didn't adapt or they didn't be the cause of the change. You have three options in business. You can either be the change, you can adapt to the change, or you get left behind. So my goal is that you guys are not the latter, that you don't get left behind, that you can either adapt or you can be the source of change. So first, I thought I'd tell you my story. I'll be quick because I know it's not all about me, but I thought you might be able to get a couple of golden nuggets out of my story. So for story time, I'm going to sit up here if that's okay, be a little more natural, get a little more eye level. I was a very curious kid growing up. I was always tinkering with stuff, trying to figure out how things worked. I don't know if you were kind of nodding your head there. It looks like you're about the same way. Sometimes getting into trouble, but always like taking things apart and just trying to learn as much as I can. And I think that really, really does help later on in life, of having a very wide breadth of knowledge, pulling one idea from here that's a bit abstract and pulling another idea from here. And if any of you have kids, I would really, really recommend just giving them as much information as they can in all kinds of different subjects and letting them generally follow their curiosity. So any parents, that served me well and it might serve your kids well. But yeah, always tinkering with stuff, always having crazy contraptions and ideas. Drew and I have talked about this before. We had, some like pulley system, like yanking their brother up in the air and making swings. And I invented this thing called the bucket ride. We lived in Norman at the time, and my dad and I, we built a tree house in our backyard. It was pretty tall. We had this really big metal slide. And I talked my sister one day into hopping in one of those plastic buckets that you put in the attic, It's like, it's called the bucket ride. It's going to be fun. All you got to do is hop in. I'm going to push you down the slide. It's going to be fun. And I learned really quickly based on her experience. I was kind of watching and observing. And once you go down the slide, there's a pretty steep angle. When you hit the ground pretty quickly, you fall right on the face. So
She's still with us today, right?
yeah, she probably still holds a grudge. But whenever you look back at your childhood, kind of observing your natural tendencies, the things you're interested in, that's very genuine to who you are. So sometimes if you're ever stuck in the current state, or you might be confused at what you want to do with your life, if you look back around like 7 or 8 years old, kind of the natural you of what you're interested in, that's a pretty good indicator of the stuff that you might be good at now, because it's who you are. So I was always exploring, tinkering, and creating things. And that's kind of the core of who I am. So you guys might be a little bit curious about my invention story. And that started in high school. Sophomore year, I went through the Francis Tuttle Votech, their engineering academy in high school. Went to nerd school. It was awesome. Filled with classrooms of people much smarter than me. There's a kid that aced his ACT and SAT tests as a freshman in high school. Like, I was a genius kid, so I wasn't that smart. But I was curious. Went through that program. I learned a lot, and I'll kind of unpack some of the most impactful lessons that I learned from that academy. But senior year at Francis Tuttle, you go through a class called Engineering, Design, and Development. And you have to look out in the world and find a real problem that means something to you and invent a solution to fix that problem. And at the time, I had received my 5th major concussion from playing football in high school. So I've been whacked in the head a little bit too many times, probably why I'm so weird today. But that problem meant a lot to me at the time. I was like, wow, if I could invent something that could reduce the impact of football players, that would be pretty cool. So for this class, I worked with 2 other teammates. It wasn't all me. It's really nice to have a talented team to work with. But we went through the process of, I guess the first step in an innovation process, I'll unpack this real quick, is ideation. So you have this problem that you've already identified, and one thing that they stress is just write down as many ideas on a big long list as you can, and don't try and criticize yourself up front. So just brainstorm, write ideas where they're good, crappy, terrible, maybe slightly good. Just write them all down, because one thing leads to another, and the more times that you criticize yourself in that process, it really does slow you down. So we ended up with about like 50 or 60 decent ideas after our little brainstorm sesh. And the next step in the process is going through and identifying which ones are feasible. So not necessarily the ideas that might be the best fit, but is this actually possible to build? And is there a slight chance that this might work? So we boiled that whole entire list of 50 ideas down to about 5 ideas. And from there, you go into the process of tinkering and prototyping, putting things together, using tons of duct tape and super glue and all kinds of random hodgepodge stuff that you put together. And you're like, oh, this might work, and very much like an 8-year-old kid just tinkering with Legos, and you're like, I don't really know what I'm building, but I'm building something. And we ended up on a design that seemed to work pretty well. And just I won't get into the technical aspects, it's kind of boring, but essentially there were 2 layers, and the first layer was a custom mold of my head. So to get that custom mold of my head, I went to the prosthetics lab with Francis Tuttle. I sat in a chair, I had to be still for about an hour. And they draped this cloth over my head, and they plaster molded my whole entire head. So my whole face, head, everything was inside of plaster. And I was breathing through 2 straws that were stuck in my nose. I just had to sit here like this. That was actually the hardest part. It was like sitting still, not having to twitch. And you can hear the plaster like crackling around your head when it starts to dry. So it goes from feeling kind of like a wet cloth to like, I don't know, I can't describe the feeling. It's very odd. I don't recommend it. And the weirdest part then was having to get the thing taken off. So the guy that administered it, he's an expert. I kind of grilled him on his expertise on this because we deal with my head. But he had to take a cast saw and saw off this thing like all the way down through my head. It was the loudest noise. You guys, there's like this like all through your head. couldn't hardly think. But the reason we did that is so we could make a mold of my head and then essentially build a custom helmet off of this head mold. And that was one of the key components of this helmet, was that it was custom fit to each single player. And we utilized some relatively new experimental foams and rubbers in the helmet to create a very dynamic and not necessarily rigid, but a very fluid and movable helmet, kind of somewhat squishy to absorb quite a bit of the impact. So we ended up getting a patent on the project, and the reason we pursued that is because from our initial testing, the helmet proved 70% better at absorbing impact than a traditional high school football helmet. So very, very promising technology, and we were very grateful to have one of our teachers or professors in the school to fund our project, and we're still working on finding an application for that, working with bigger companies, not necessarily football, but sports and athletics in general, pursuing that. And I eventually ran into a guy at I think it was an innovation conference, wasn't it, here in Oklahoma City? Yeah. And there's this strange guy with the Fu Manchu that walked up to me and started asking me questions, and I was kind of in, we have to give so many presentations over at an expo or something, you're kind of in autopilot mode, so I gave my autopilot speech, but I guess it made somewhat of an impact on him. But overall, I would say that the process of innovation that I learned at this academy, I'm just going to go back over that in a second, was one of the most beneficial things that I got out of my 3 years at that academy. And the process, just summarized, is ideation, so kind of put as many ideas, whether they're good or bad, as possible, and trying to validate those ideas as quickly as possible. And that's a very crucial step that many people miss, is trying to validate their ideas very quickly. So I don't know if you've ever heard stories of an engineer or a developer coming up with a product that they think is going to change the world, and then release it to the world and nothing happens. It's not valuable to anybody, it's not even feasible to build or scale. So I know we talked a little bit about your prototype. So if you have a prototype, trying to figure out if it's not going to work as quickly as possible is a really important step, because otherwise you're going to waste so much money and so much time later down the road if you don't find out that it's not going to work. So we found out a lot of ideas that didn't work very, very quickly. And then the next step is perfection comes through rapid iterations. You're never going to reach perfection on the very first try. So there's a phrase that I really like from a guy named Guy Kawasaki. He's a very well-known entrepreneur and innovator. He says, don't worry, be crappy. So the whole premise of it is like, don't worry about the thing being crappy, just get it out there and rapid iterate as quickly as possible, move on the fly and be flexible. So we went through so many different prototypes really, really quickly in the span of a year, finally ended up on that prototype that was the one that was awarded the patent. So rapid iterations, don't worry, be crappy. And then the next step is finding product market fit. So that's the stage that we're still in, and that's extremely difficult to do. And this is also an area that a lot of entrepreneurs will get tripped up in, is they think that what they've created is for a specific group of people. And sometimes there's another group of people that will start using that product, and they get really frustrated, like, oh, this isn't what our business is, where these people aren't supposed to be using it. A good example would be, say, early Apple. They might have thought that this is, I'm just making up an example here, I don't know if it's accurate, but say they created their first computer and they thought people were going to use it for spreadsheets and data analysis and this, that, and the other very techie type stuff. And then they found out there's another crowd that was using it to make art or search the internet or do creative type things. And I guess a novice or unwise person would get really frustrated at that and try and figure out why aren't people using this for spreadsheets. But the most successful entrepreneurs and the most impactful, they pivot. And they pivot to where people are actually using their product and they optimize for the people that are receptive to their message and their product. So I think that's a very interesting concept to adopt, or principle to adopt. Yeah, I apologize, I'm kind of rambling all over the place, but I hope you guys are following. So this next phase of this little meeting or meetup, whatever you call it, I thought I would do like a workshop type style. So I know there's the 3 key points that I had that you guys might have come here for: the mantra, quantum leaps, and ideas. So what I wanted to do is go through each of those sections, and I'll kind of give my little spiel about each thing. I would like to pick out a person in the audience. We're actually going to go through that exercise together and see if we can come to something that might impact your specific business. And in that process, I'm hoping that everybody else can learn going through that exercise. So you guys ready to get started with that? Cool. Awesome. So, a mantra. I'm going to start with a really bad example of a mantra. Let's take Wendy's, for example. Say Wendy's, the big wigs at this company, they want to come up with a mantra. Like, oh, our business exists for strategic corporate partnerships and shareholder growth and strategic alliances and innovation. You don't think that when you're going through Wendy's drive-thru that you're going there for strategic partnerships and shareholder growth and this, that, and the other. Like, I just want a cheeseburger, you know. You'd be surprised at how many companies go wrong there, and they really don't understand the outcome or the meaning that their business has in people's lives. So let's say, I'm coming up on the fly here, a good Wendy's mantra might be healthy fast food. I don't think they're very healthy, but you get the example. So the essence is trying to distill the meaning and impact that your company has and distilling that down into 3 words. 2, 3, maybe 4 words max. And that's a very, very difficult exercise to do, to boil your whole essence of your company down into 3 words. But a few companies have done it well. One company is Nike. They're pretty big. You might have heard of them. Their mantra is authentic athletic performance. That's their meaning. That's why they exist. That's kind of what their whole marketing strategy is built around. Authentic athletic performance. Harley, motorcycles, lots of fun. They are personal freedom. That's what they stand for. That's what they sell. When you're buying a Harley, you're buying your personal freedom. You can go cruise around, do whatever you want. Another iconic one that almost everybody knows of is Apple. Does anybody know Apple's mantra? Anybody spit it out? Anybody? Steve Jobs, think different. Classic. 2 words, think different. That it's really interesting how 2 words can have such a big impact on you, make you think differently. So to pick a mantra, the first thing that you have to have is understanding the impact or the meaning that your business has, why you exist, and what are the outcomes that your business generates. So who in here would be a brave first volunteer, and we're going to pick into your business and try to figure out what is the meaning of your business and how can we distill that into 3, 4, even 2 words if we're really brave. Anybody? Yeah? Yeah? All right.
Am I the only one that raised my hand?
Yeah. Let's get into it. Could you reiterate to people kind of what your business is, what you do, just elaborate a little bit on kind of your introduction there?
Sure.
You want to bring it up on the
Yeah, come on up here. Let's do it.
Come on down.
I'm kind of short. I think
Got a chair for me, chair.
This is fine. All right, so well, my business is basically a training company that exists to help nursing students succeed. Nursing school is traditionally extremely difficult because we cram a lot of stuff into a short amount of time. And then the questions with nursing tests are difficult because they're all ambiguous. We give people, like, here's a situational question with a patient, here's 4 answers, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 answers. They're starting to make it even more difficult. All of these answers are all correct, and you have to pick the best answer out of 4 to 6 answers. And then we're even making it more difficult where you have to select all that apply, and if you don't select everything that applies, it's all or nothing. So their destiny hinges on this test. Like once they get all through their nursing program, whether it be 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, they can't practice nursing until they pass this extremely difficult test. So that's where I come in and do a 3-day workshop, live review course to help them pass their test, which is why my voice sounds like this, because I was talking all day to the students. That's kind of it.
So what are the positive outcomes? If they work with you, what's the best case scenario? What would that life look like if they successfully go through your program?
So I have a little spiel that can I just do that? So as a result of training with me, 99% of nursing students pass the boards on their first attempt, drastically decreasing their anxiety and dramatically improving their test scores. I'm looking for individuals who want to dramatically improve their test scores, drastically reduce their test taking anxiety, and forgot the other part of it. The other piece of it was something like, and see their dreams come to fruition, their lifelong dream of being a nurse come to fruition.
So, did anybody pick out any common themes in that? Any words that she said multiple times? I heard anxiety quite a bit. That seems like a key point, something that you're helping them alleviate. And it sounds like you help simplify the process quite a bit. So, I'm thinking of something like simplification, reducing anxiety are key points. Anybody else? Can you pick out any key points just based on her pitch there? Anybody?
Help.
Help? Just helping them through the process?
When you look at nursing as a care product, helping them get through their, you mentioned anxiety, also a care product. So those streamlines that her or her.
Streamline, that's a good word there, yeah.
The main thing I picked up on was passing the first time.
Yeah, it is a big deal to pass the first time. Schools get dinged if students don't pass the first time. And then students become very humiliated if they don't pass the first time, and sometimes decide that it is because they were stupid, and sometimes people wait like 7, 10, 12 years to come back again, because if they don't pass out the first time.
Our dreams.
A lot of pressure.
Dreams, accomplishing something that's very important to them.
Streamline.
Preparation, so kind of structuring the whole process of preparation. So overall, kind of help ease the whole process. So I'm kind of formulating like nurse testing made easy. It's kind of the essence of what you do. Easy, something that's easy you don't get as anxious about, and kind of help simplify the whole process. Any other common themes that you guys see in that, or ways that concept could be simplified?
I don't know if it was a word you used, but when you were saying that, I felt support, like you care and you want to help support your students through the process.
Thank you for saying that, because I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, my little motto that I have now is helping you pass with confidence. But I like what you just said, that make testing easy.
Nurse testing made easy.
Testing made easy. I like that.
Yeah.
I really like that.
So one of the reasons why a mantra is important is if you are ever going to grow your company and you have employees working with you, if you're working with other vendors, if you're doing any sort of marketing, your mantra is like the ultra distilled version of any of your marketing, the messaging, and why your company exists. So just think if you were to ask anybody from the companies that I've mentioned, like Apple, if you wouldn't talk to them and talk about why Apple exists, they probably have a pretty good compelling reason, and it's probably like 2 or 3 words. So it's really easy to get people on board if something is simple. So if you're trying to get someone on board for your mission or the vision, the purpose of your brand or your company, if you give them a like 3-page document of why your company exists and your grand master plan on taking over the world, they're probably not going to adopt it. But they might have a higher chance of adopting something that's 2, 3, or 4 words, and it's really easy to remember, it's impactful. So if you had employees, I don't know if you do, when they're coming to work in the day, they know it's like, oh, we're here to make nurse testing easy. That's very easy to wrap your head around, and that can be unpacked in multiple different ways, but it's really small bite for people what you are. So that's it. You give a round of applause. I like it. Yeah.
So just to clarify a little bit, would this be something that you would be using mostly internally for your team, or you're creating like a few words of a vision for your product aimed at your clients?
That's a really good question. And the answer is both. And both because you want to turn your employees and your customers into evangelists. You want them talking about the reason why your company exists and how you help people. So that's what we just came up there. That's a very clear, compelling reason why she exists and also how she helps people in 4 words. That's like an ultra elevator pitch, you know? So if you can get your customers to understand that mantra and your employees, you have a gigantic sales force working for you.
Can I dig a little more into that?
Let's do it.
Might you actually, so you mentioned Nike's slogan, which was authentic, athletic performance. So how does that play together with their kind of classic "just do it" tagline? And what would be kind of like so we have I want to do a prep just to make this about me for a second. Sorry, we have a aim higher, work smarter is our kind of slogan, which is very, very well. It's intended to be client centric towards our customers. It obviously applies internally, but we have sort of different metrics internally. Would this be something that we would maybe need to take a little bit of that message for clients and some of our internal stuff to create like a cohesive,
Yeah, if you can combine the two, it's much simpler, much more powerful. Think of a company like Tesla or SpaceX. The people that work at SpaceX and Tesla, or let's just focus on SpaceX. Their mission is to go to Mars, right? So like every day they come to work, they know that what they're working on, even though they're launching satellites into orbit, the ultimate goal is to get to Mars. So the companies are moving in the same direction, and their brand loyalists and their customers, they're all moving in the same exact direction. Everybody's on the same page. So it really simplifies things and can ultimately have much greater impact because people are much more cohesive. Everybody's moving in the same direction. So, yeah. Any other questions on the whole mantra thing? I'd be happy to unpack that a little bit more.
Well, on your company, I mean, you use that same slogan internally. It means the same
Good.
thing. Still
Yeah.
feels great. Right? It's very simple. Your internal employees, they're all trying to do the same thing to help the same goals. It works. I see. Unless there's something else that we don't know about your business internally.
What was your business again?
Actually, not too dissimilar from hers. It's test preparation for college admissions exams.
I want to make a comment, and I don't really read it.
No.
Your slogan sounds very generic, and so I don't know that people buy into it as much as one that you create is a little more specific to your business.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think maybe the idea with it being so driven to the clients is, I mean, the first thing that they're looking at is very data driven, like we want a higher score. So the aim higher, it's like their main concerns are, can we get a higher number? And I don't want to waste a lot of time. So it's kind of driven towards this like aim higher, learn smart is really data driven.
It requires some context to set up properly. So out of context,
yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, it's very much like written for our clients that are kind of already self-assessing this need. If you talk to test prep to someone who doesn't need it, they probably would be like, what exactly is this? But for people who are desperate for it, maybe similar for you a little bit. Like I probably a lot of people don't know too much about the nursing testing process, or for the ones who come to you, they're like,
Like it's like water in the desert for the people who know they need it. But when you try to explain it to other people, they're like, what are you, what is it you really do? So I love that.
So question in the back, you had a question? Comment?
Would it be inappropriate if I asked what you thought of, if I shared with you what I do for business, due to the fact that I already have a mantra?
Let's
And
hear
then
it.
see what your take is on what I do, and then give me your thoughts, and then share with you what the name we've chosen.
How about give the mantra first, and then tell me what you do and see if they share up.
Wait, you want to guess your mantra? No, I want your opinion. Somebody saying, what's your mantra? We can guess your businesses, what you do. Those who don't know what you do.
Okay, that's fair enough. But I appreciate your candid response that you gave, and if that's okay. So it's heroic, tailored solution.
Heroic tailored solutions.
You help that. I'm helping, I'm thinking clothing already.
I'm thinking clothing. I'm thinking Superman outfit.
Clothing, I'm thinking law enforcement or military solutions for, they license to the problem. The clothing doesn't fit very well, so I'm going somewhere with that, like personal problems.
It's probably nothing to do with
Mainly
it.
charge for security, it's all about management, it's all shit.
We're nowhere near our.
Probably has nothing to do with clothing, right?
How close did we get?
Nowhere near.
Nowhere near? So what's the business? What do you do?
I study information science.
Okay.
So what brought up that question is that you mentioned earlier that there were people that were driving nuts that, as an entrepreneur, and the best ones that were successful did it because they're a quick start.
Gotcha.
So what I studied is your primal brain, the limbic system, neocortex, right? So those are cognitive side and the affective mind. What we study is your primal brain, which is Ethan was at birth, is the same person he is now when he makes his decisions, communicates, and learns. So how this applies is in several different things. I apologize, I don't mean to be rude, but this gentleman right here, to my right, is more than likely what we would call very high in implementer status because he's writing everything. But he's got a tablet to his right, and that generates usually how he handles quality. He likes to write things down more than likely. The gentleman in the front that was talking earlier is probably somebody who likes to fact find a lot. He likes all the information. He's asking a lot of questions. Probably not that person that be asking a yes or no question. He probably can't. He doesn't feel comfortable with that. And then the lady that was up front telling about a nursing program, she talks a lot. So she's probably a quick start, meaning that those type of people are very important in the field due to the fact that they think, and when they talk, that's when they get their answers. They overcommit, they pivot a lot. Those are salespeople. So how this works is, these three people, if you were to put them into a room at this stage of the game, they would frustrate one another because they put themselves in what we call stress. Wouldn't work well together. But what I've learned working with colleges, education systems, nursing, colleges, police, military, what have you, everybody has challenges with diversity. Not the color of your skin or your gender. In fact, you're just different. And I don't like that you're different because you're not like me, so I'm having a hard time understanding. So that's what I do. When I bring into businesses, that's the most fun. For marriages, that's really fun. So, heroic being that the person that we're identifying is heroic. We want you to celebrate you. It's very important that you celebrate who you are after you take the assessment, right? Tailored, because most companies are one-size-fits-all. Education systems are one-size-fits-all. Even you didn't learn the same way as I learned, right? And solutions, which is trying to provide you a solution based on a scalable metric, that never changes. You are who you are. It doesn't change. Not even through brain injuries. That primal brain doesn't change. So does that mantra?
I would say,
I know I'm putting you on the spot, I apologize, because you're a firefighter too, so.
Yeah. I'll just come back with a solution.
Yeah, for me, I used to use solutions in a lot of my stuff. I got rid of that word solutions because it was so big. I had nobody saying solutions. I thought that was too generic of a word. Right.
So I'm trying to focus on the outcomes of the function of your business. And just from what you said there, the gist of it sounds like you help to simplify human interaction.
Correct.
And that's you come into work, it's like, what are you doing? Well, I'm helping people simplify human interaction. That's really simple, and that's something that I could quickly latch onto that would also branch out into more dialogue or conversation. If we were going around and introducing ourselves, you said, wow, what do you do? It's like, well, I help simplify human interactions. Like, wow, I'm intrigued. That sounds interesting. Tell me more. So yes, that would be...
Simplify human interaction, that was your good.
Yep. That's what I got.
I like them.
Yeah. Let's, for the sake of time, let's make a leap and go to quantum leaps. Go to the next one.
I can do that.
Yeah. I'm going to start out with a short little narrative. It's a 3-part narrative. And this is the story of ice. You guys ever eat any ice in your cup? You probably have an ice maker in your refrigerator, or you might get some ice at a restaurant you went to. I went to Chipotle right before here. I had some ice in my cup. Not a long time ago, to get ice, you had to go out to a lake, and there was a crew of people, and they'd get big giant saws and horses and buggies. They would saw big giant blocks of ice and haul it back to town to cool stuff. That was the ice industry way back in the day. That was ice, say, version 1. And that was what you did have it year round. You don't have ice unless you live in Alaska or somewhere up north. So ice is limited. And their idea of innovations with ice version 1 was bigger horses, bigger buggies, maybe a faster cutting saw, bigger cutting saw. They could get more ice from point 1 to point B. And that is where a lot of companies will get stuck, is they're very caught up in the what they do. So I'll unpack that a little bit later. Ice version 2, they invented ice factories. They could manufacture ice year round, and they had the Iceman. They'd load it into a big truck, and they'd deliver it all around town. You could cool your food in the comfort of your home. And it was a lot cheaper, a lot faster, higher quality, and it totally put out of business the old version 1 ice industry. And that is what I would classify as a quantum leap, is they're not making steady incremental improvements. They completely jump to a different lane and they're doing something completely different, but it still achieves the same outcome. And that's something we're going to focus on, is the outcome that your business generates, not necessarily the what or the how you do it. Ice version 3, you have refrigerators, you have ice machines in your home, and that completely put out of business ice version 2. There is no longer a need for ice trucks or ice picks. You didn't have to try and crack open the big ice blocks and fit it into your refrigerator box. You have this fancy little machine that spits out little ice cubes. It's pretty cool. So there we just observe different quantum leaps, hopping from one completely different idea to another completely different idea. And almost all of those cases, the people that were in ice version 1, those were not the people that created or jumped into ice industry number 2. And the same people from ice industry number 2, they weren't the people that started ice industry number 3. They were completely put out of business, completely blindsided. And the funny thing is, take ice version 2. They have this big network of ice trucks, all these big factories, people have a business, they have people that they're employing, big warehouse, all this machinery, overhead, whatever. And once these new little machines called refrigerators and ice machines start popping up, like, oh, that's nothing. It's like, oh, we're still good. We still have this big monopoly of a business, and it's not going away anytime soon. And a few years later, they're completely out of business and they can't even function the way that they used to. So, I would like to help someone in the crowd kind of identify the outcome that their business is in, not necessarily the what or the function of your business. And then identify, maybe are there some quantum leaps that you might be able to take to still achieve the same outcome, but more efficiently, lighter, maybe less overhead, more efficient. So another quick example is a person selling shovels. What is the outcome that a shovel does? What is the function of a shovel? What does it do? What do you do with a shovel? Dig holes. So when you're selling a shovel, you're not really selling a shovel, you're selling the ability to dig a hole. So you see how some person would get very caught up in the what they do, like we sell shovels. No, you sell the ability to dig holes. If someone came around with some like magic ability to just like snap and boom, there's a hole, the shovel business would be completely gone. And that would be a quantum leap. So who is the next brave soul that's going to go next? And we're going to go through a quantum leap.
Head on down. Yeah. Need the music.
How are we on time, Ron?
We're good.
We could be here all night. You guys
Cool.
started there.
Rockford, give us a bit of a background on your business, what you do, how it functions, and then the crowd's going to figure out what is the outcome that you sell.
Okay. I'm Rockford Steele, Stout Lending, commercial residential lending. I can't say the outcome is all about. I don't know what way to say that other than to say the outcome. We hook up people with money to buy assets.
Who's going to take the first stab at guessing the outcome? What is the outcome that Rockford is in the business of selling?
I think the main outcome is helping people to achieve their dream.
Achieve dreams. Anybody else?
He sells money.
Sells money?
I said he helps them secure the money that they need to do their business.
This one's a little bit tricky because this industry is a very, in a way, an old one. It's been around for a long time, and not a ton of innovation has happened in that long time until recently when the internet has come about. That's in a way the version 2 of digital lending, people being able to secure a loan without going into a bank or even talking to a banker. So, any other ideas?
Security.
Security?
I was just thinking if you're lending for a home, that's security. Or even for finances.
Basically expansion of opportunity.
Yeah. Expansion of opportunity.
Everybody's a little more focused on real estate investors too, right? Less homeowners.
It helps people acquire properties.
So we do both. Stout Lending as an entity does more residential for owner-occupieds. I head up the commercial division, so I personally do more for businesses, but investment property, whether it be single-family property or you want to buy, say, a building to put your business in. Everything.
For the sake of the exercise, could we pick one vertical of the business that you do, just kind of help simplify the whole process? So it might be residential, let's see, relatively commercial. Commercial? Okay.
That part's my baby, so.
Okay.
Well, commercial, residential, commercial buildings. Commercial lending to investors is different than commercial lending to homeownership.
Can we narrow down to commercial real estate? Lending for commercial real estate?
Like apartments, buildings.
So what would be then the outcome if we laser focus on that? What is the outcome of him lending money to someone to buy a commercial real estate property?
Asset acquisition is my mind.
Asset acquisition?
Creating stability.
Simplicity? Security?
Stability.
Oh, stability.
Easy access to the money.
Easy access?
With ease, getting the loans easily.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Something that secure a space. I mean, that's ultimately what we're trying to do, right? You need the location.
Peace of mind.
But you're not actually like the title company or anything along those lines.
No,
It's
we
more
just,
so.
yeah, we just hook them up with money.
Someone said like, yeah, we're gonna get money as quickly as possible, basically the means to acquire.
So would it be safe to say that the end result is getting money? Is that the equivalent of the hole being dug? Is that the hole in this analogy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then what is the equivalent of the shovel?
The different lending tools or institutions, the lenders.
Is the money the shovel?
The loan.
The money.
Hold the tree?
The loan.
The loan
That's
is
the investor providing the money.
All the numbers and percentages and wizardry?
I would think that right now, excuse me, Stout Lending, our company, we're a broker, so we have, on the commercial side, I've got over 20 lenders that we work with. And so to us, and if we navigate through all the different lenders to figure out who's offering the best deal for what you're doing. I figure a way to simplify that and streamline it so that, say, the borrower can do that without it being overly onerous. Because right now, if they don't want to work with the broker, they're calling banks to try to find which one's going to work. Right now, we take that load off, but what's next?
Next is they just go online and they fill out a little bit of personal information, and a computer program goes and finds all the different banks and which ones are the top 3 you can pick from, and just work directly with that bank.
That's also a bit of a lie, because it doesn't actually give you your best option.
How good the algorithm of the program.
Well, you just identified something, which is there's not any one thing out there that does that specifically. There's not a Rockford out there on the internet as a computer program finding the absolute best match for the deal. Like, I've done that. I've gone online. I've done the search for the best deal, and I've also done a Rockford. And just letting a robot or a piece of software trying to find me and match me with the best lender doesn't work because it doesn't understand the conversation with me about what I'm trying to achieve. So what I'm trying to achieve is an acquisition of a property in a certain way. That's the old stuff, right? That's the old stuff. And then like Rocker said, use the shovel. So people try to reinvent the shovel by doing it online, with a program. It does it, but it doesn't do it quite right yet.
And that's why we want to Rockford. It's going to replace Rockford. AI is going to replace it. You own the AI.
That's the idea. Is,
so
figure out what's going to replace me so I can
That's what they're help assess the risk for.
So we don't underwrite for the lender. We let the lenders do their own underwriting. They assess their own risk and that kind of thing. We'll help them collect all the documents. So we like to stay as the point of contact, because underwriters are not necessarily the type of people you want communicating with your clients. I mean, nothing against them, just like you mentioned, sir, about people thinking and operating in different ways. Underwriters are very detail oriented, and they're going to word things in a way that nobody really understands what they're asking for.
You're the front end and they're the back end.
Exactly.
You're not going to sell your product. Sell your product. It's going to happen.
But you do essentially help pre-qualify.
Yes.
For those lenders.
Yeah, because we have a pretty good idea of what they'll accept.
So what's led to help Rockford identify the might be already existing version 2 of what he's doing? And is there a way that he can hop into that version 2 so he doesn't get left behind? So the clue that I'll drop, the little breadcrumb I'll drop, the internet. That's probably the next, it's probably in that space. So do you guys know of any existing solutions or other types of businesses that help people acquire commercial assets? That's the whole that he identified. So is there a simpler way, a faster way, more efficient way to acquire commercial assets?
Quicken loans.
Quicken loans, yeah.
I know it doesn't feel good, but it is the leap.
They they are painful to work with. And the Rocket Mortgage is not fast.
What about the Uber model?
The Uber model?
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a bit?
Well, so Uber hooks up drivers who are just kind of random people that need a ride. So maybe you have all these small lenders and collectively they can work together or, to get that investor to drive to commercial property.
Or you pre-qualify them.
So there's a little bit of this going on around, and I think this is kind of what you're talking about. There's some websites out there, and I haven't done it, but I've looked into it before, where you can go and become a lender yourself. Say you have $10,000 loan, now you can become a lender, whether it's on property or it's on a project or anything, some different kind of business. You can be the lender. They'll match you with the borrower. They'll match you by yourself. They'll match you with a group of other lenders, et cetera, et cetera. So that's out there, and you make a return, but you also incur quite a bit of risk. I think that's like almost to the point of crowdfund type lending. So that might be another stage of this, some sort of crowdfunding and or crowdfunding with a Bitcoin type source.
So there is a lender on our platform that how they sell their loans is through crowdfunding. So they loan from, they've got some institutional lenders that have agreed to say you can loan our capital and then you sell the loan via this crowdfunding deal, which I'm okay with because they fund with their money, but lenders pretty much all sell their loans, right? So they sell through crowdfunding. It's a company called Share Estates. So if you want to go on there and you want to buy pieces of loans that I'm originating, more power to you. As far as originating that way, working with private lenders, we have I think about 8 on our platform right now. It's interesting and it's nice. It's great to be able to offer it, but they run out of money. Most of my lenders are institutional. They're backed by, say, hedge funds and whatnot. I'm not worried about them running out of money. So my local private money guys, like I said, they run out. I've got, like I said, 8 on the platform and all but 2 are out of money. It's remarkable how quickly that happened.
I saw a hand go up in the back there.
You mind?
Have at it.
So it doesn't matter what widget you sell, whether it's money, whatever it is, right? People buy from people they like and trust, right? But there's also there's four major components that I would recommend you consider when you're trying to improve your local and national market share. One is if you're online, you're being competitive digitally, you have to understand there's 4 types that have reverse sides to them as well. So you have fact finding that likes a lot of information. You also have a counteract to that. That goes to saying, don't tell me about the labor gains, just show me data. I don't want to hear it. Just get me where I need to go. So when you're marketing that, you have to recognize that's one type of person when they learn or communicate. I need just enough, just enough, just enough. The second is there's a position called follow through. There's a counteract to that as well. So you have to have a marketing device that gives that person comfortability with staying on, they don't click through, just staying on your site. And that is by process orientation. You have to have 1 through 10. But you also have a counteract that doesn't want that. So you have to also have that availability digital marketing wise or locally as well. You have to provide that availability. And the biggest thing, and I'll skip the third one because it just takes too long. I don't want to hijack this place either. But like this gentleman here, all about quality. If you met a person, you're like, hey, can you give me directions to that place over down the street, this restaurant? And they, yeah, okay. You have to write, right? That person has to use the mouse. So when you're marketing to that individual, especially in a competitive market, with money, you're a guy who doesn't. And it's probably very difficult to stay on board with a larger company. So your local presence, you've got to be smarter than the average bear. So you have to understand how to communicate with clients based on their learning, not your own. One size doesn't fit all. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack you, buddy.
It's good information.
I help you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Who was it that mentioned blockchain? That was really interesting. I didn't know if that was going to come up or not, but I thought that was interesting. I don't know if many of you know how the blockchain works. but this is a bit of a rabbit trail, but I think it might be interesting, maybe learn something new. The way that I heard the blockchain explained to me that made a lot of sense is, picture if Rockford and I, if we got thrown in prison, right? We got thrown in prison for, say we were speeding down I-40 at 200 miles an hour, we got thrown in prison. Good time. You guys are all the inmates, and we're out eating a meal, and I decide to trade Rockford my drink for a pack of cigarettes. And if we were working on a blockchain system, we would make every single person in this whole entire room take out a sheet of paper and write down that Ethan traded Rockford this drink for a pack of cigarettes. So everybody has a copy of what happened, so that if Drew came up and tried to dispute that, he said, no, that didn't happen. He's like, I didn't see it. Everybody else in the whole entire prison would have a copy of a document that recorded that transaction and said otherwise. So I've been really curious to see how blockchain technology, cryptocurrency might affect the real estate industry. And it's still kind of unforeseen to see how that's actually going to get adopted, if it will get adopted. But that is a potential quantum leap that isn't completely concrete yet, but it's at least something for you to keep on your radar and see if anything comes up, pops up about that. So there was Quicken Loans, Rocket Mortgage. Were there any other quantum leaps that we identified, or the next levels that?
So I just had one thought to the process. I don't know how customers find you, but maybe having an Alexa skill or a voice skill with Google or some other, where you can conduct a small, short interview that the customer can provide you information and then reach out and contact them that way.
So definitely it seems like the consistency are digital platforms that basically connect people that need money to money. And you essentially become a platform rather than a broker or a lender. So that seems to be just the commonality. That might be the version 3 of the money lending, is that we're being the, yeah, that should make sense. Yeah. Any other ideas or concepts on that? Anybody?
Or going reverse, going backwards, where as that becomes more popular, maybe people miss the, I need to talk to somebody real that knows my local market, knows me as a name, not a number, and I want to spend time with you, not an AI.
I have had some borrowers that say, I want to meet with you in your office. I want to know that you exist.
I was going to say something similar, except a little bit, that people want to do everything from home, from their comfort. So maybe you go to them, and maybe you don't go personally to them. Maybe you go to them through Zoom or something. You know, Zoom is so popular right now for meetings. Rather than me having to get in traffic, then I can just Zoom with you and feel like you're in my living room.
Way better than Skype.
You know?
I'm not familiar with this.
Like Skype?
Like
similar?
Way better than Skype.
Yeah. It's Zoom is just more for business than Skype.
We do a lot on the phone.
Yeah.
We can lend in 44 states, so you know, we obviously.
But then they can see you and know that you're trustworthy, you know. So.
Would that be something they would have to download, or would they just go?
It's just not really. It's super easy.
Okay. Really. So
Yeah.
when you start telling a borrower, I need you to download this.
I Zoom with clients all the time in other countries and here in America.
I see that being very beneficial. A face with a name and a voice, and you know, I mean, it's very helpful to build trust if you can actually see who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Any last ideas, concepts for Rockford? All right. Thanks, Rockford.
I would say one last thing, 3.0 is coming. It's changing. You're on the cusp of the whole industry changing.
Yeah. The goal is to be on the bleeding edge, right?
There's probably something with a drone too. You gotta get that. Have we go around and take pictures if you're.
We already have lenders that are okay with e-signing closing docs. It's just the state won't let us yet. So we're trying, right? Thank you.
Thank you. So the last section is ideas. Sometimes there are people that have so many ideas going through their head that they wish they could make it stop, make it turn off. Some people have just an idea every 10 years or so. Does anybody in here feel like they might lack creativity, or they have a good business, they just can't find the right perspective or the right idea? Maybe they know something needs to be changed, but they just can't figure out exactly what that thing is. They're kind of at a creative block. Back there, I saw one hand. There's got to be a couple more, like might hit a roadblock. Yeah. So I want to go through just the process that I use and just some tips and tricks, stuff that I use when I get in like a creative slump. So this is relatively unstructured, but I'll just kind of throw out some of my tricks that I use. So one of them I already went over at the very beginning. Is just writing out as many possible ideas as possible. And to be able to write out ideas, you first have to know what the problem is. And that's the tricky part. And a lot of entrepreneurs, whenever they're starting a business, or they might be very good at coming up with ideas, but they can come up with ideas with no problems, if that makes sense. So they're just an idea, but they're not a solution to anything. Does that make sense? So finding the problem, a good method that I have found to find the root cause of something that's wrong is the 5 whys technique. Has anybody ever heard of that?
I love that.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, it's asking why 5 layers deep. So you identify a very, very surface level problem, and you can't really figure out exactly what's the issue. Ask like, oh, well, if this is an issue, why is that an issue? And you're like a 5-year-old kid asking, why this, why this, why this? They're very good at getting down to the root problem. And you can do the same thing by going through the 5 whys. Sometimes it might even be just 3 whys, and you get down to the bottom of it. And I found that to be particularly helpful. So that's an idea for you. Once you figure out the problem, obviously just write out as many solutions as you can think of. And the key word there is solutions. So you have to have a problem, and you find the solution, write down stuff that's plausible. Good ideas, bad ideas, you're not trying to filter anything, you can do that later. So once you have those ideas or potential solutions for your problem, you have to have some sort of criteria on how you're going to filter those problems. It's like what deems a good idea and what deems a bad idea. It might be the actual feasibility to implement that idea. It might be a great solution, but it's really costly and it's going to take forever. So you really have to kind of figure out what are my constraints. Maybe it's financial constraints, maybe it's time, maybe it's human resources, you don't have enough people. And that can actually sometimes lead to further ideas for solutions. So for example, I'm working on a platform, a global platform. I'm connecting one type of people to another type of people. And initially I was like, well, I'm gonna have to go to a development firm and custom code this whole entire thing, and it might end up being like a $500,000 project to build this custom thing. So, well, that's a solution, right? It's a potential solution, but I didn't realize that there's already pre-built softwares out there that could accomplish exactly what I need to, but cheaper and faster. It's like, wow, that's really, really cool. So both could have gotten me the same outcome, but one got me there faster and cheaper, and it just came from me questioning the constraints that I put on myself. Does that make sense, or is that kind of vague? Grasp that decently well? Another interesting thing that I wanted to touch on that I thought might be helpful is it was made popular by Thomas Edison, who created the light bulb. Everybody knows that. But he was very famous for having what he called a solution-centered mindset. And he has a ridiculous amount of patents, very, very successful. And one of the reasons is he kept a journal, and every single day he would just write down problems that he encountered in the day, stuff that frustrated him, ideas or problems that he observed in the world. And he would write down, on average, he'd at least get 10 problems every single day. That was like a goal for him, to identify 10 problems. And because of that, he ended up having just this massive data bank of potential solutions, because he'd go through the process, 50 ideas for each problem that he saw, and that led to all of his invention ideas that he had. So sometimes that can be an interesting creative challenge to implement, just going around every single day and start looking for problems in the world. And you'd be surprised at how many problems haven't been solved yet. They can be relatively small, they can be big, and it could be something that just personally frustrates you. Chances are there's 7 billion people in the world. Chances are something that frustrates you, would probably frustrate a few other people. So that's sometimes a good method. It's relatively simple, but a good method to come up with ideas. Next, I just wanted to do a little bit of crowdsourcing here. Do you guys have any good methods, tips, or tricks for coming up with ideas? Do you get in a creative slump? Is there anything that you do? I know you're probably in a creative field. Sometimes being required to be creative is something difficult. You're going to get a creative slump, it's like, what do I do? I have no idea.
Do something completely out of the ordinary. I mean, completely out. So for me, I'm the fishing and cycling. So just something completely opposite that I would go to is, I don't know, it's just, I try and get out and move around and not go to there's things that would typically bring me joy. Trying to go and do something that would be just way outside.
Interesting.
Also breaking things, not like just smashing things, but figure out a way that something is torn up. For me, creatively, if I'm designing something and I will literally start tearing it apart and try and move it back, just kind of place it in different orientations, and that kind of helps me see it differently or turn it upside down. And just something completely out of the ordinary is usually what helps me.
I've found that moving from locations sometimes help. Like if I'll get in a slump working from my computer desk, I might go to a coffee shop, or sometimes you would just go on a drive and go somewhere that's completely foreign to me that I've never been to before. Kind of something new. It's like a splash of cold water to the face, so to speak. Something new, kind of to jog your creative brain. Any other tips, tricks?
Along the same lines of that, if we do repetitive things every day, it can form a subconscious pattern. So, like driving, for instance, we always drive the same direction, so just taking a different exit, we will change up that subconscious patterning a little bit in order to open up space for you to allow something else to come through.
I like that.
One thing I do is condense the problem into something, concise questions, and then write out the answer.
Just simplifying it. 5 whys technique, get down to
That's not like the biggest brain nerd in the room.
I know Ron has an interesting tactic. I can't remember what you call it, but Thomas Edison would also do this. He'd think very, very deeply on the problem or the task at hand or the project he's working on, and then stop. He wouldn't try and come up with a solution, he'd just quit. He might take a nap. He might go on for days and days and days, but you work really, really hard just to immerse yourself in it and quit. And sometimes that idea or that solution just pops up in your head.
That's true.
Kind of like it's like a toaster oven popping up the toast out. It's like, oh, well, that's handy, thank you, subconscious brain. I found that to be very, very helpful when I'm working on projects. In fact, I did that just a few days ago. I hit like a big brick wall and got really, really frustrated. I was like, well, I'm just going to quit, go on a drive, do something completely different, and a couple days later, the idea popped in my head.
So one of the things we do is called brain dumping. We ask our brain these questions, our subconscious. We tell it not to give us the answer to a specific time and date, whatever that may be, in that environment, whatever it may be. Usually, what happens is it's usually about a month out. I'm going to ask your brain this question. Do not give me the answer until I do the specific brain dump on this certain day. And then what happens is there's a technique to that. Once you show up there and do that, then you ask your brain, all right, I'm ready. You ask your subconscious to pour this stuff out. And you will literally write a brain dump on a piece of paper. You won't organize it, prioritize it, punctuation, grammar, you go up on that piece of paper. You don't care about tangents, you go wherever it goes. Your brain's much faster than you can possibly write. You'll come back around and your answers are in there. Sometimes if your answers come before that, you need to ask a better question. You can ask more involved, deeper, different questions.
You're the only person in the room that said anything that is to the affect side. Every time you want to do something, it's to make you feel differently. Everybody else has said they're going to cognitive wellness, they're going to how they do things. You're the only person that said, I need to change the way I feel. I need to change my surroundings because if I do that, I'll feel better. That's interesting to me, I think. Yeah. You operate very strongly in the affect side. Cool.
Good to know. I've found some people are affected very heavily by the, I guess, having a specific place for a specific task and keeping those very segmented. So for me, I'll have some places that I'll go to that I just do a specific certain type of task. So you might have the place where you go to do all your super analytical, like spreadsheet boring type work, and you don't, I guess, cross that with the place where you do creative work. So for me, I'll have a few places in the city. I'm not going to tell everybody because they're my secret hiding places. I have a few places that I'll go to and I don't tell people. I just disappear and I go think there. It's like that's all I do. I just go sit down and think, be by myself, and I don't do any other type of work while I'm there, just so that I don't exactly know how it works. You might be able to explain how this works, but there's something relatively magical about that. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's a very important process to what you're trying to accomplish. Am I hearing you correctly that when you reach a stopping point that you go to a certain place? Yeah, that's typically what that's called, is you've reached your point of exhaustion. Your mind is at its uncomfortable. We call it stress. We have a brain scan that shows what the brain looks like. It's usually a different color, red, is what it shows up, and you're using a lot of energy. And when you reach that point, you have to decompress. And that's what we call getting back to cognitive wellness. And that could be from watching television to going to changing your affect, which is going to a place that you feel good, and you just zone, right? Binge on Netflix, right? You do nothing, right? But most people think that that's not healthy. It's extremely required to have, especially if you're an entrepreneur, because you're using a lot of brain power to do QuickBooks and sales and marketing and development. So for you specifically, that's very interesting to recognize. You're here, you reach your point, I need to go to my secret hiding place and do my thing.
Yeah.
Very healthy for you.
My wife realizes I use nothing to blow stuff up. So I go virtually to blow stuff up in video games. Not real life, it's a video game.
I connect with nature. Like, I'm a cyclist, I'm a swimmer, and so if I hop on my bike, even if I'm not trying to get an idea, that's when I get my greatest ideas.
Steve Jobs was famous for walks. He takes 20, 30-minute walks, and sometimes if he was doing a brainstorm session, he'd go on walks with people. It's a big thing. Another interesting concept I wanted to give to you guys is you have a natural rhythm on what type of work you can do at what time during the day. So you'll have 2 peaks and 2 troughs during the day. And during the peaks, you're your most analytical. You can do very detailed logic type work. You can fact check me on this if I'm wrong. I would appreciate it if you just called me out, whatever. And then the trough points in the day is when you're most creative. It might feel like you're kind of in a slump, but sometimes you might have good ideas. You can kind of do mindless doodles or work on some creative type work, creative output. So knowing what types of tasks to do when during the day are quite important. So that's specific to every single person. Like for me, I don't start getting productive in the day until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's just how I work. But in the morning, I can consume information well, I can learn well, I can do creative work well. And I know that towards the evening, I'm going to get another creative slump. I can do creative work again, and then kind of cursed to be a night owl. So I start getting productive again about 10 o'clock at night, and I can just in my zone, and I can just crank out a lot of work. And it works for me. It's not optimal. Everybody else for society is usually a morning person, but
it works for me, and I can kind of optimize my natural rhythm, my natural flow.
And
So
we got kids.
Yeah. Disruptive.
Yeah.
Share this with you when you ask so you can understand why. If you
Yeah.
want.
I'd love it. How are we on time, Ron? I feel like I've talked forever.
It's, we still got about 10, 15 more minutes, and we're still good.
Okay. Well, how would you guys like to do just a random Q&A? Maybe even ask each other questions, bounce around ideas. I love technology, so if I don't know if you want to grill me on like what types of softwares I use or books we've read recently. That might be an interesting
All right,
thing.
here we go. Ask it. What software do you use? Start.
I love this software called LucidChart. And LucidChart is probably the best software I've found to be able to actually work on theoretical paper, digital paper. It's technically a flowchart software, but it has like the biggest data bank of symbols and logic sequences. You can map out.
Is it like a mind map? Is it very similar?
Yes, but times 10. So you can map out IT frameworks, you can map out cloud architecture, you can map out business entities, you can map out websites, and it has all the tools you need to do that. So I do a lot of work on LucidChart. It's just a really nice way for me to get my crazy ideas on paper, and it actually roughly makes sense to people. So I found that software to be very, very helpful. There's a free version. The paid version is like $10 a month. It's probably the best $10 a month I spend right now. It's awesome. But that's one software I love. Anybody else have like a gold mine little software that you use that you like?
Oh, sorry. No, I have another question when you're
Yeah,
done with the
go
software.
ahead.
Oh, so when you were talking about quantum leaps, so here's a question I have. I guess what I thought, there's another type of quantum leap that people talk about where you create what you want in your mind as a quantum leap. So like, do you do that with this? I thought maybe that's what you were going to speak to.
I kind of just made up that term on the fly. So I don't know if that could, I know you said you came here because that concept intrigued you, but I do know that there's other concepts called quantum leaps. But I do that, and I do think that the thought process you have in your head and your imagination has a big impact on your reality. So I think it's definitely true, and I do that quite frequently.
Okay. Cool.
So back to the softwares. Any like gold mine softwares that you guys use that you found to be helpful?
Fordoro. Can't pronounce it. I use tomato timer. We use A timers. It's a click, click, click. It's an app that allows you to focus based on time frame that you set. It literally clicks. And that clicking creates like a mantra or a rhythm. You feel it. But as I get older with kids now, I'm zoning out and spacing out. I just spent 3 hours on nothing. When I turn on that Pomodoro timer, it helps me stay in line. And then you put it on your phone, it's free. Or you can do 8 times too. You both take breaks. So you work like 15 minutes, and you take a 5-minute break, or work 30 minutes, and take a 10-minute break. There's different variants of it.
Anybody else have good software? Yeah.
Way of Life.
Way of Life. What does that do?
One of my favorite apps. It tracks whatever you want to track daily, and so you set up your parameters, and you're at 7 or 10 things that you want to make sure you do every day. Drink a gallon of water, meditate, go on a 30-minute walk. Do my 3 big rocks. Might just be one example. So you set them all up, and you could, at the end of the day, you want to check off if you did it or not. It would be green if you check it, or you check red, and then you could see if you can do trains or whatever, like links, or can you do for 90 days straight or whatever. So, Way of Life.
Way of Life.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And I'm in sales. Like I'm on the business development side of the house.
Let's hear it.
I got my partners that are super technical, but I mean it's kind of partial because we are a partner. But like I love the Zoho CRM. Yeah, how easy it is to kind of keep track of all my deals, all my contacts, all my leads. logging calls, logging activities. It's just easy. It's super easy, and you can customize it to kind of fit what you need it to do. And they have like 45 different apps. So that typically, like, they have an app for something, and you can always integrate, you know, two apps together. Just kind of help operate the business. It works really well, and it's like cheap. It's cheap. Yeah, I mean, as far as like bang for your buck, it's really good. I mean, especially if you're wanting like everyone in your organization to be on it, like, and I'm saying like just go to the store, you can get the Zoho one that's only like $35 a month, and it gives you access to all of their apps, like all 45 of them. But the deal is like everybody has to be on it. So we only resell the CRM, but I have friends that like are running their own business. I'm like, don't even get anything from me. Just go in the store and buy that Zoho One plan. And as long as everyone in your company is on it, you can access every app that they have in their entire portfolio.
Zoho sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, they got like 45 million users.
So, ZOHO. Big piece you want, you add as you need it.
Yeah, and it's a lot of their app stuff, like you can actually do your own apps, they have their own creator stuff, but a lot of it's just kind of widget driven. You don't have to be a coder. They have their own code to do some of that stuff, but you don't have to be a coder. You know, a lot of it's just, like I said, widget.
You basically pay us 20 grand to set up CRMs, and then you can get it for $9, $8. I think there's a free version still, or tiny, somewhere hidden, this little tiny free version. You just hooked in.
Yeah.
You don't need any.
Anybody have other questions or comments?
I think so. Earlier you were talking about your little helmet thing.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So you have a patent on that. Okay. I was an aircrew flight equipment technician for the Air Force. So what I worked on was the aircrew gear that they use in flight. When they eject, the pressure amount on the head is probably the highest that you'll ever encounter in your entire life. They use these little pads called Zetteliners, and so it's a little pad, and then they have this foam, and they shoot the foam, right? But there's a company called Aero Oregon, and what they do is they do all the tech on that, so they produce all of those new helmets. The parts on the helmet are getting heavier and heavier, so if there's a person out there that can actually make custom stuff that is going to produce that, they're using custom hearing stuff now. They're producing little earplugs. They're producing custom masks, custom everything, because it's one of those things where it literally, that force just going out, ejecting, can break your neck in a second. And so
you don't eject twice.
Yeah, you can't eject more than twice in a jet, and you're done. You're done. Your career's done. And I mean, there's so many mistakes that can happen. If the mechanic side doesn't do something right with the windows, we had an aircrew guy in the back where the guy in the front ejected, the guy in the back clipped his neck, broke his neck. They didn't know he was dead until he hit the ground. But it was because the helmet, the glass didn't open right, but the helmet would have saved his life if it was the right amount of padding to actually protect his skull, but it didn't do it because they're starting to create padding here and here and like all sorts of different stuff because it's just getting more and more intense. I mean, they're going faster in planes and all that kind of stuff. So if you're looking at ideas of that, government contracts are probably the best thing you can ever do. Army, military, go that route, because if you could do that there, then it will get adopted by the NFL and all those other places because they'll see that and they'll work with that. So
We can say we knew you.
It's a very good idea.
I was going to say motorsports. That's it, the doctor.
So the interesting thing about motorsports compared to a sport like football is a motorsport helmet is intended to actually shatter and crack under impact. And the interesting thing about a football helmet is you have to withstand repeated impacts over and over and over. So the actual design of the helmet is almost completely opposite. One has to be durable, but still protect you, and the other, kind of like how modern cars, when you go over a pothole and you hit a curb and the thing just explodes. It's really annoying, but that under a high-speed impact would absolutely save your life. because all that energy is getting dispersed outward on all the shattered parts. So yeah, I learned that the hard way. It was one of the things that was like, oh, we could just do it like this, and that was one of the things that we found no really, really quickly. So it's an interesting challenge. But anything else? Anybody have any other questions or random ideas? Anybody?
What's
Well, thank you
Breker?
for having me. Oh, what's Breker? It's relatively new, and so I mentioned previously that I'm building a platform. What I'm doing is connecting really smart people from all around the world, even decently smart people, in a global innovation network. So I am connecting these smart people to opportunities that actually make a difference in the world. So it might be working with a big company like Baker Hughes or Boeing or the government, or other nonprofit foundations that are more humanitarian, like how do we reduce carbon emissions. Actually getting these super smart people, herding all the cats and pointing them in one direction, saying here's a big challenge, here's the problem we need solved, go have at it, and I'm going to help you, give you all the tools, resources, and framework you need to make that happen. So that's my big project that I'm working on.
Contact info?
You can find, the company's Breker, BREKER.io. I have a couple cards up here. They're pretty simple, but if you're going to talk, if you're interested, I'll give you my contact information. We can keep in touch. But
It's also in the Meetup as well. Go to the Meetup descriptions, there's information out there as well.
Yep.
Or you just message me Meetup, I'll send it forward to you as well.
Thank you, guys. This whole time, I've been trying to come up with an idea. I've been kind of stuck on the best way to give away this book.
Throw it.
The book is called Smaller, Faster, Lighter, Denser, Cheaper. It's all about innovation that is kind of fitting. So, who has the best idea on how to give away this book to this crowd? Let's go.
First person that asks a question.
First person to ask the question.
He or she ask first? Yeah.
Yeah, does everybody agree? Is
Yeah.
everybody give away the book?
She took action.
She took action. I like it.
I like it.
You got the book. It's yours.
So a couple announcements. Next month, I believe we're having Joan Curtis come out to speak. She's a fantastic speaker about networking without being a creepy networker person. You've met all those creepy persons. She's probably been the most speaker. We've come back over and over the years. And so we always have a great turnout for her. And she always has great information to show you how to be a networker without being a creepy networker. Right? She always says, don't throw up on people when you meet somebody. You really want to get, especially when the internet age, everyone's kind of like separated from this interaction. So that's next month. Also, a lot of us carry the conversation after the meeting. We call the meeting, Rockford's dad and my dad were business partners, and they always taught us when we were growing up, they always had the meeting after the meeting. So our meeting after the meeting is that we go to Joey's Pizzeria right across the street. Normally we can walk to it, it's raining, so you may want to, but you can still walk up right over there. They stay up a little bit later just for us. They take good care of us. So the meeting after meetings where we break bread together, eat tea, milk, beer, water, air, whatever you're into, but that's where we have the conversations. And then other than that, am I forgetting anything, Rockford? I'm sure I am. I'm always forgetting.
Coffee meetings?
Coffee meetings, oh, Coffee with the Entrepreneur. We always have the very first Wednesday, the second Wednesday of the month, we have Coffee with Entrepreneurs, which is through the Meetup of OKC Entrepreneurs. That's where we kind of sit down over coffee. About 10 to 15 of us show up in a coffee environment, a bit more intimate, and we share conversations. I always tell people you never know, again, what idea or what solution may be to your problem because someone's in a different industry, so they're outside the box that you're used to, and so there's always creative ways to, ideas and learn from each other. So that's first or second Wednesday of the month called Coffee with Entrepreneurs. It's within this OKC Entrepreneur group. So guys, thank you for coming out, and we'll hopefully see you next time, and or meeting after meeting. Huh? What? Oh, Abby? Well, Abby, she has the Women's Self-Improvement, which is, I believe, the first Monday of every single month. It's on the OKC Entrepreneur group as well. So, all right? Yeah, thank you.